Welcome everybody. I am Carmi Lawrence with Concerned Citizens League Shul Members out of Skokie, Illinois. And I am here in the Simcha Event Studios in Rogers Park. And we are broadcasting live tonight with a very special webinar training presentation for the community. CCL Shul Members has some very esteemed guests with us tonight, joining us from Colorado and California, and I want to introduce them to everybody. Greg Williams, who is joining us from Colorado, is the Director of Training and Innovation for Arcadia Cognerati, and he's an industry expert in irregular warfare for the defense community. Mr. Williams is a decorated veteran urban law enforcement professional and a decorated veteran former soldier with over 35 years of combined experience and expertise. He was the architect of the world-renowned U.S. Marine Corps highly successful and life-saving Combat Hunter program and the U.S. Army's Advanced Situational Awareness program. Greg has trained every Tier 1 military force in the United States and much of the world, as well as the DEA, FBI, ATF, CIA, DIA, and the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Greg has multi-conflict, full-spectrum operational experience with conventional and special operations forces, law enforcement professionals, and other government agencies. The commander of the United States Central Command, CENTCOM, General James Bulldog Mattis, referred to Greg Williams as a, quote, national treasure. Welcome, Greg Williams, and thank you very much for joining us. In addition to Mr. Williams, thanks, Greg. We very much appreciate you joining the community tonight and giving us your expertise on behalf of the Jewish community here in Chicago and around North America. And joined with us from California is Brian Marin. Brian Marin is the Senior Vice President of Operations for Arcadia Cognerati and is a subject matter expert on human behavior pattern recognition and analysis. Brian is a former Marine, sniper, and a high threat protection specialist who has spent the last 18 years conducting real world and training operations around the globe. He has operated with, trained, and advised numerous Tier 1 military units, conventional forces, law enforcement agencies, and private sector clients on the art and science of human behavior. Brian holds a master's degree in applied psychology from the University of Southern California and grew up not far from here on the south side of Chicago. Welcome, Brian. Thank you very much for joining us. We very much appreciate it. Gentlemen,
thanks for having me on, Carmi.
It is our honor to have you here tonight. And I want to say thank you for your service to our country. Thank you for risking your lives so that the rest of us can be free and enjoy our freedom. Your sacrifice is acknowledged and recognized, and we very much appreciate it.
Thank you, and thanks for letting us come on.
Well, this is a really important topic because managing personal safety in these uncertain times is something that the Jewish community here in Chicago is very concerned about. There have been attacks on Jews here in Chicago. We've had synagogues that have been vandalized and had their windows broken. We've had Jews in the heart of the Jewish community in North America, in New York and Manhattan, attacked, beat up, targeted, and assaulted, and there seems to be an explosion of anti-Semitism, especially since this last conflict with Israel and the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. And CCL Shul Members has been addressing some of these concerns with our Shul Safety Officer program, our SSO program, by taking members of our community, members of each individual minyan in their synagogue, and training them to be an effective first responder. We have over 3 dozen Shul Safety Officer candidates that are in our training program right now, 3 separate groups of classes that are in training right now. However, those classes are focused on turning everyday citizens into effective first responders in case of an active threat inside of a synagogue. However, what we aren't training for, and one of the gaps, I would say, in our training cadre and program, which is the reason why I was really interested in having you guys collaborate with us and having you help us, is this focus on avoiding becoming a first responder. You know, anybody who's been to Israel knows that from the minute that you set foot into the El Al terminal or you sit down on your flight to Israel, usually some plainclothes El Al agent, formerly, you know, usually formerly Israeli government trained, sits down next to you and says, excuse me, you know, why are you going to Israel? Who are you traveling with? You know, where do you go to synagogue? Who's the rabbi there? And they put you through this kind of soft interrogation. And I'm assuming that there's some preventative intelligence measures and psychology reading that's going on as part of that process there. And you guys are world-class experts in this area, and this is what you teach government agents and soldiers and everybody in the world that is involved in combat warfare to do. So can you tell me, Greg or Brian, how can we take the knowledge and skills that you have honed over your career and use it to help make the Jewish community safe? How can everyday people who are going to the synagogue, they're going to the kosher market, they're going to Torah study classes, they're going to pick up their kids at school, how can they use some of this knowledge and some of these skills to make themselves and their families safer?
Well, I appreciate the introduction, Carmine. Thanks again for having us on. We're a pleasure to be here. And, you know, to speak exactly to what you answered, that's kind of what we're here for tonight, to give you a little bit of taste of some ways to do that, right? And some good takeaways today. But the beauty of what we do is it is extremely applicable. Like you said, we've been able to do this skill set and all over the globe. It's because of that human behavior that we stick to, right? It's completely acultural, apolitical, and we stick to what you can prove. So understanding that, and what we build on is stuff you actually already know how to do. So anytime I walk into, doesn't matter what any one of those high-speed units are, I walk in and one of the first words out of my mouth is, I'm about to teach you a bunch of stuff that you already know how to do. It's just no one really ever explained it to you, and they didn't give you a process on how to use it. And that's, I think, where we come in.
That makes total sense. Do you want to start the presentation? I know you've got.
I say we go ahead and yeah, let's go ahead and start it off. Yoni, I'd appreciate it. He can pull that up and we can jump right into it. So if you have a yellow pad and a pen or piece of paper and a pencil, whatever you got, now would be the time to grab that, because we're going to give you some great takeaways.
Great. All right. Yoni from Simcha Events here in Rogers Park is pulling up the presentation, and now we've got your first slide.
Thank you so much, and Yoni, we'll be relying on you to be our slide deck manager for us. So you could go ahead and click to that next slide, because Carmi already gave us a great introduction. And just to go over again, you know, who we are and where we come from, and we love doing in-person training. You found out a little bit about us and what we do with our program is we're a small, agile team that can go anywhere in the world in short notice and really partner with organizations such as yourself to enhance your capability, right? Internally build up what you can do inside your agency. But go ahead, next slide. If you want to know more about us, you know, Carmen already gave a great introduction, but we're all over the web now. We're on social media. We've even got a podcast we call the Left of Greg podcast, where we talk about different examples of this. So next slide, please. So if anyone has any interest in that, please check that stuff out. So just like Carmen said, this is a list of some of the folks that we've trained, right? So you've got different tier 1 military units, you've got federal law enforcement agencies, local folks, research organizations, different types of universities. These are all over the world. Next slide, please. We also work with folks in, healthcare, hospitals, schools, churches, some of the major airlines, some local law enforcement. And the idea behind what we do, we get to play in a lot of different areas and a lot of different domains. Because back to what I said is we stick to what we call human behavior pattern recognition and analysis. And that's just scientific stuff that you already actually know how to do. And it's completely universal. So it works in any language, in any culture. And we talk about someone's behavior and specifically determining their intent. Does this person likely mean me harm, or is it completely benign? And that's what we're really experts in. Next slide, please. And the idea of what separates us from anyone out there doing anything like this is we've actually been poked and prodded by the scientific community, a whole bunch of different research organizations, the Office of Naval Research, Army of Research Institute, and a whole bunch of other think tanks that your tax dollars go to. And they poked and prodded the program and said not only they're highly scientific, not only do they work, but they're highly effective. Right? Some shown to increase your situational awareness by over 300%. So you're more likely to see things in your environment, which is really the first step in this process. Next slide, please. And what we always say is we try to look at these things as, this isn't a cost. This is an investment. This is an investment in yourself and in your people and in your organization. And as always, the right solution is expensive. But in what we're talking about tonight, the wrong one can really cost a fortune. Next slide, please.
So one of the things, it's hard to stay humble when you listen to that. Thank you. I wonder who wrote that resume for me. But if you've been all over the world and you've trained with the Rangers and the SEALs and the Deltas, every time somebody recognizes Brian or Shelley or I, and we're traveling around the world, they come up and ask us what we call the Jason Bourne question. Where should I sit at the restaurant when I go out with my family? Should it be close to the door, with my back to the door? Do I need to count the people in the lobby? Listen, you want some sound advice? After all the training that I've been through, before you go to a restaurant, rehearse the Heimlich maneuver with your family. You're much more likely to need help when you're choking on a piece of a meal than from a terror attack at Applebee's. You need to balance the right training for the right event at the right time. Slide, please. So basically, the easiest way to learn how to do that, the first step is understanding what an ML-COA, a most likely course of action, is, and what an MD, a most dangerous course of action, is. So an ML-COA, take a look at that frightened kid at the bottom of the stairs in the top photo. He might just be skipping his midterm test. That's an ML-COA. It's easy enough to deal with. But he also might be a troubled youth having a break with reality, and the voices in his head told him to shoot up your business, then kill himself. That's a homicidal fascination with suicidal ideation. That would be an MD-COA, a most dangerous course of action, and you're not likely to pick up on those signals without training. Again, everything is easier if you anticipate it and train for it. Slide, please. Look, I know signs are necessary, but signs aren't going to deter a hardened criminal or a terrorist. Heck, they don't even deter illegal dumping close to my house. So you need a plan, and you need to know the plan inside and out, and you need to rehearse that plan. And you need to know that everybody around you knows that plan, everybody in your family, everybody in your synagogue. Generally, when we conduct a threat or a risk assessment at a business, we find out immediately that they've got a written plan in a binder somewhere on a shelf, yet we also find out that nobody but the security director for that specific building knows what to do, when to do it, and they certainly haven't rehearsed it anytime soon. So, slide, please. What we want to tell you is that if you take a look at the experts in the field, the manufacturer of the AED, for example, they didn't leave anything to chance. They know that during a high-stress incident, you're going to forget third grade. So what did they do? They built a machine that tells you what to do each step of the way. Now, wouldn't it be nice if you had somebody whispering in your ear during an emergency telling you what to do? That's what we train to. It's called advanced critical thinking. That little voice in the back of your head giving you the warning before the attack occurs. Slide, please. So to give you a quick example of a ML and an MD-COA, it's a guy close to my house here at Rogue Manor West in Colorado. And so I noticed that he was filling these gas cans with unleaded fuel. Each of the gas cans is about 3 gallons, and he had 5 of them. That's 15 gallons of fuel. That's important to me. Now, to determine whether it's going to be a most likely course of action or a most dangerous course of action, all I have to do is invest a little time and watch and listen and smell. Now, if he drives to a place and he starts filling up a lawnmower or a string trimmer or a chainsaw, and he's got other people that work there, all good. It's probably an ML-COA. If he sticks a road flare in his mouth and starts heading for City Hall, well, it's likely an MD-COA. Houston, we have a problem. Sometimes, with the right training, it can be that simple. Slide, please.
So what Greg is talking about is what we do. And what we do is train people how to look, not specifically what to look for. Because if it were as simple as here's a list of the 10 things you need to look for in your environment, well, we wouldn't be having this discussion, and Greg and I would be happily out of a job because these problems would be solved. So what we understand and show people how to do is just how to attribute based within the context that I'm looking at, using that analytical framework that Greg was talking about. Is this the most likely course of action, or is this the most dangerous course of action? But if all I've ever seen a gas can used for to fill up my vehicle or fill up my lawnmower with gas, I don't ever think of it as a potential threat. So that's where that balancing act comes in. Next slide, please. So what we always talk about with our program is it works from the battlefield to the boardroom. Next slide, please. It works from Kansas to Kandahar, as we say. And this is basically what we do. This is an overview of what we do. And what we're going to do for you guys tonight is we're going to drop you in like you were in our course and give you a piece of this puzzle. So if I look at that bottom, that says HBPRNA, and that's what we do. Human behavior, pattern recognition, and analysis. Well, what does that mean? Well, if you think back to when you were a little kid, no matter who raised you, mom or dad, aunt and uncle, grandma and grandpa, neighbor down the street, whoever it was, when they walked in the room, before they ever said a word, you knew whether they were happy, whether they were sad, whether they're angry, or in my case, whether I had to go run and hide in my room because I was about to get a whooping from mom for something that I did. Well, that's human behavior pattern recognition, and you're born knowing how to do that. What we don't ever get taught is the analysis portion, and that's where we come into play. So we have things like our SPEC system where we talk about societal and proxemic and environmental indicators and cognitive errors that we have in judgment and kinesic cues like body language. We get people really good at that, and that leads to what we call SPAR, the ability to sense make and problem solve faster. And that gets me more adaptable to different types of environment that I otherwise would have been uncomfortable in. And that'll lead to resilience. And that's what we're talking about. That resilience, that allows me to have that advanced critical thinking mindset. So I'm no longer walking through my environment, reacting to what happens. I'm figuring it out and creating explanatory storylines and coming up with likely courses of action in real time. Next slide, please. So like I said, we're dropping you into class today. So this is our first notes I can take. You probably don't even need to write it down to remember, but it's something you can use the second you get off this webinar tonight. And that's all you got to remember is B plus A equals D. Baseline plus anomaly equals decision. So what's a baseline? A baseline is just what's normal for that given situation on that given day, right? Friday afternoon on the interstate is going to be a lot busier than early Sunday morning. But given that baseline, that's what's normal. Once I establish a baseline for my environment, I can proactively hunt for anomalies. What's here that shouldn't be here, and what's missing that should be there? And once I find 3 or more of those anomalies, I want to come to a decision, right? And that decision is now based on my observations and perceptions using artifacts and evidence to support that reasonable conclusion. And that decision, right, because all the training and education in the world doesn't do you any good if we don't do anything with it, drive you to that decision. Is it, do I have to fight my way out of here right now because, oh my gosh, I'm in some incident, it's in progress, and I got to fight my way out so I can survive? Or flee? Do I need to run and go get help? Do I need to stop and not go into the situation and call someone to help me before I do? And then, of course, 99 out of 100 times it's report. We've all heard the, if you see something, say something, but what am I supposed to see, and what am I supposed to say, and who am I supposed to say it to? Well, that's where we come in. Next slide, please. That's what our system of advanced critical thinking does. And the beauty of it, it's like a flashlight and a laser, right? So if I think about a flashlight, when I turn that on, that beam gets wider as it goes farther out. And I can scan my environment in my area. And when I see those anomalies, I can get laser focused on just specifically what it is that I'm looking for. Well, the other thing is I can actually kind of look at myself and my own organization in the mirror with this. I can look in the mirror and say, wait a minute, maybe I'm the anomaly. Maybe I'm the problem. Or even, hey, you know what? Greg showed up late to work today. He never does that. Is it something small that, it was a construction or traffic issue, or is there something deeper going on that we need to intervene right now before that situation gets worse? Next slide, please.
So what we're doing is we're trying to prompt your brain to think, prevent, pre-event. If you can get training so that you can predict the weather with a high degree of certainty, you can certainly take the appropriate training to predict danger. I'll give you an example of that. Dew point is air temperature plus relative humidity. You add wind and you have what's called fog. So what? Well, that means you dress your kid in brighter clothes tomorrow. You don't use the high beams when you're driving. You slow down and you expect traffic accident and delays by pedestrians hit by cars. You can even put chains on your tires or have a Pioneer kit with extra water and blankets in anticipation of the event. Slide, please. There's also a very simple algorithm for lightning. The flash to bang theory measures the time from when you see the lightning to the time you hear the thunder. And a measure of, for example, 5 seconds flash to bang means lightning's a mile away. 10, 2 miles, 15, 3 miles, you're getting the hint. And what it is if you do it enough times, you form a habit of action. That means you get better each time, and you'll be able to predict events in your own life. Slide. And I know how to do this because if you take a look, Brian and I talk about yellow pads. What I had to do is the same thing with Combat Hunter or for ASAT, for the Army and for the Marine Corps. I had to take out a yellow pad and study everything dangerous that might face a Marine or a soldier deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan in a kinetic environment. My specialty is human behavior, so what I had to do is I had to link all of the cues that would have come together to indicate impending danger. Now, if you look on my list, stuff like the history or a special event or a previous attack or a person walking around with a camera or a film crew or an optic, those things coming together, 3 or more, might have indicated danger. I highly suggest tonight that you take a look at your surroundings, your day-to-day, and you make a similar list. What dangers might I face tomorrow? What can I do to avoid or mitigate the effects of a specific threat? Slide, please.
So we like to say that your security is largely your responsibility, and we need to take ownership of that. And people go, well, what does that mean? And it's actually a good thing. You can be responsible for it. So you can make your own self and your own world safer that way by taking responsibility of this. And one of the ways that we do this is through, our training system and our process that we have. But the idea of taking control of my own life and my own responsibility, it actually makes it much easier to realize. I can't always rely on, some federal law enforcement agency or local police, right? It's not their job to be everywhere at once, and they can't, even if they wanted to be. I have to take control of this in my own life. Next slide, please. So what we're going to give you tonight is, like I said, one piece of the pie that you're going to take away from this. So let's get that yellow pad out if we haven't had it out yet, right? This is like we're taking you and we're dropping you into our class for a little bit, and you're going to learn some new concepts. Next slide, please. And those concepts tonight are called 5 combat multipliers. This is something Greg developed for the Marine Corps Combat Hunter program that worked really well. And all we're doing is just kind of updating it for modern times today. So I want you to think of each one of these, because we're going to go through each one individually. I want you to think of them as kind of not just thinking points, but actual planning ideas, right? So these are habits of thought that can create habits of action on how you see your world, on how you see your synagogue or your home or your school or where you live, your vehicle, where you park. I can take all of these, each one like a little lens, right? And I can drop it in. If everyone remembers having those clear acetate papers back in school that your teacher might use to put it over the projector and write up some math problems or whatever was going on the board, well, we use these combat multipliers in the same way. I take each one and layer it in over my own security plan or my plan for going out to dinner with my family that night. And I can use one and it'll help modify my plan. It'll show my weaknesses. It'll show where I need to improve. And there's simple everyday things that we can use. Next slide, please.
So the first one is going to be tactical cunning. That means outthinking a cunning adversary. That means you should consider your adversary's perspective. Figuratively, take time to walk around in their shoes. See the world through their eyes. You need to think like a potential opponent. Where would I need to be to ambush me today? Where would I use a bomb to attack me to get the most explosive value? Where could I hide to shoot at me? Don't follow a daily pattern. Alternate where you walk, where you park. Be what we call predictably unpredictable. Slide, please. So tactical cunning means using a crafty strategy to surprise an opponent or an adversary. Listen, you walk around every day with the target, sometimes on your head, sometimes on your face or on your back or on your building. So parking further from the entrance to a restaurant or business so you can use your senses before you go in is a good strategy. Thinking of taking a cab or a taxi or an Uber today rather than your own car to change up your routine. Starting work an hour early or staying an hour or two late. Having a safe room in your house or business and rehearsing retreating there and calling for help. Coming up with a code, a hand signal for the high holidays that would signal danger to a friend or a relative. These are all tactical cunning steps that you should consider. Slide, please.
So the next one is called tactical patience. And this just is understand I have to use the gift of time and distance so I can control when things happen. I can manipulate the operational tempo in my environment. What does that mean? It means simply not reacting necessarily right away, or overreacting, or committing resources that I don't need to commit yet. This is how I can take a situation and get the advantage out of it. I can control the speed and momentum of contact. My adversary will constantly have to adjust their operations to my pace and time if I understand this concept. And this is where Greg talked about rehearsals. So I don't want to commit too soon or too late. Now, it doesn't mean moving slowly. It just means using time as a weapon with which to defeat a cunning adversary. Next slide, please. Tactical patience is an important thing to understand. The enemy knows how to use this tactical patience, right? Sometimes the initial event or the initial attack may just be a distraction for the major event that's going to occur. Whether that's the first responder vehicle that shows up, an ambulance that shows up that turns out to be that vehicle-borne explosive device, right? We've seen this time and time again. So I can manipulate that operational tempo that now I'm behind the curve a little bit because something's occurred. Well, let me take that second. Let me look around. Let me understand what resources I have before I commit them so I can make the best decision at that given time and place. Next slide, please.
Yeah, so when we talk about geometry of fires, what we mean is in a combat sense, but you can apply it to your everyday life. Look, if you create and maintain interlocking fields of fire, now generally that means weapon systems. With you, it might mean chemical aerosol spray, not a handgun. It might mean a taser rather than a shotgun. What it means is from your feet to the sky, from your left limit to your right limit, and 360 degrees in a circle, that as far as you can see, you have somebody covering that right lateral limit or that left lateral limit. Well, it goes to fields of communication as well. Now, listen, maybe in the synagogue or on a high holiday, you can't use electronic communications inside the synagogue. Well, then your communications comes down to hand and arm signals, and you better have some rehearsal, and everybody better know what those mean. And let's talk about interconnecting fields of information and intelligence. I can tell you this. Not all information is important enough to become intelligence, but no intelligence has ever been developed that didn't first start as information. And you know what you got to do? You got to cut out the signal to noise ratio. You got to know what to look for, and you got to know who to tell. We usually generally say that, what do I know? Who needs to know? And have I told them yet? And then finally on that list is interlocking fields of optics and observation. Optics and observation mean that you can see to the greatest degree of your optics the environment within which you're going to operate it. If you can control just those four factors in every instance, you're going to hold your entire team safety and security and have the tactical edge over an opponent. And I'll tell you that the training that Craig has given you and his folks are considering all of those options when they're training you. You just have to be ready for them. Slide. So I'll give you an example of that. A camera might deter a certain kind of criminal, but it's not going to slow down a terrorist. And cameras and fences and gates, they're all what we call a semblance of security. And they're better at making you feel good than deterring an attack. So if they're not combined with boots on the ground, you and your daughter and your husband and your sister, if they're not combined with you and a plan, then all you're going to do is record your next attack in living color. Training and rehearsal are effective deterrents and proven methods to survive even the most brutal attacks. Slide, please.
Good Shepherd is something that a lot of us are taught even at a young age, maybe not so much with those specific words, but the idea is a chain is what we want to create with our security and everything Greg just talked about in geometries of fire. I want to create that strong links, right? Well, the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So I want to operate in battle buddy teams. I want to understand that it's not just me and my responsibility alone. I have a network of people. And just like we talk about training and rehearsing with your team, it doesn't have to be something elaborate. That could be something as simple as walking through and discussing what would you do at different points if certain situations occur. Now, that Good Shepherd has to build trust, security, and stability within their team, but also with the entire population of the community, right? I can't shut out everyone that's around me as well. I have to somehow include them into that plan, or at least understand that they're part of that community. And a Good Shepherd builds that. They build that network of safety and security with local law enforcement, first responders, emergency room, and just people out in the community. So we have more people on our side when something like this, something catastrophic occurs. And a Good Shepherd means operating at the speed of trust. Next slide, please. So I don't want to give handouts, but always a hand up. look, that good shepherd principle is something I have to live, right? That's what we call that leading by example, or living by example, or showing what right looks like to that rest of that team, to the rest of that community. That alone will demonstrate what's acceptable and what's unacceptable behavior, what you'll allow and what you won't allow. And if I have that mentality, that good shepherd mentality of everyone in my community, well, then we all start living that, we start living our values better, and we can have that communication. And then people see that, right, from the outside perspective and go, wow, that's a much different area or community versus the one down the street, because they're living by those principles. Next slide, please.
And to tie them all together, we have Guardian Angel. Listen, Guardian Angel is a dedicated, alert person in a hidden position. Hidden is the key here. If everybody knows where he's at, even your team is going to look up and wave at him, and that's going to break that, and somebody will see him, and they'll choose to attack another day. The Guardian Angel's sole mission is to protectively, proactively observe you, and therefore protect you. A Guardian Angel will provide the up and out so you can focus on your daily life and the down and in. And you got to get used to creating a habit of emplacing a Guardian Angel no matter what your security posture. That means going to chow. That means going to a film. That means for the high holiday. Slide, please. I will tell you right now that you will be surprised how much you will see if you invest in a good pair of binoculars and position yourself on the roof, scoping out the parking lot before a big event or a high holiday. It's a good rehearsal to get into. Being able to prevent danger at a distance greater than your normal eyes or your smell, or patting somebody down as a greeter, means that you have the tactical edge. You're using the gift of time and distance, preventing an attack at the furthest observable distance possible. Slide, please.
So what we're going to do now is continue as if we were all sitting here in a room in person doing this, and we're going to go to what we call a little discussion about this. You'll all have a chance to answer or ask some questions, but we'll start off this discussion. And so Greg, I would like to kind of pass to you while Yoni, you can bring down that presentation. Please, can you start this discussion off for us, Greg?
Yeah, easily. And what I'd like to do is, okay, we have the 5 now. We have them on our yellow pad. And we understand kind of what we're talking about, because human behavior, pattern recognition is one side of the coin, and then analysis is the other side of the coin. So I'll give you a story. And I'll give you 2 very brief stories, Brian. The one is, you know, our dear friend in Consigliere, Chantel Clements. Well, he's got 3 daughters and a son that all have to learn how to drive at the same time. So he's got that headache trying to train those kids. But what I told him is you got to go the extra step. And the extra step is when you pull up to that red light, have you used both, you know, tactical cunning and geometry of fires, for example, to teach your kids to make sure that they're far enough back from the lead vehicle and the side vehicles, so if there's a dangerous incident, they can hit the gas and push through that gap and drive away from the danger. Now, if you're going to teach your kid that, and that's an important consideration, you better go to a Walmart parking lot that's empty and teach them what the turning radius of your car is. Because if you don't know that, the last time you want to be learning that, Brian, is in a bona fide emergency when somebody's running and gunning at your vehicle. So I will add to that. How far can your car go when it's empty of fuel? Because you know where the empty indicator is, next to the PRNDL, the PRNDL, and you take a look at that and you figure out how far can I go? Because you'll need to know that in an emergency. What if my oil pan gets shot off when somebody is chasing after me and shooting me and I'm trying to escape and avoid the danger? How far will my vehicle run before it seizes up and stops? Listen, can I get out of the trunk of my car in an emergency? If I'm taken hostage, do I have an emergency kit in that trunk to help me defend myself? These are simple questions. And if you've never asked yourself this question here in the United States, somewhere in suburban Chicago, then you need to reassess what a real emergency is like. Would that make sense, Brian?
So I'll give a couple examples, Greg. And first I'll start with an example that I use, you know, as a Marine sniper team leader in combat. And then I'll give you one that's really no different. I use the same process with my own family going out to dinner. But we talked about tactical cunning, you know, thinking like the enemy. Well, that's a great platitude, but how do you actually do that? And what I would do is when we were deployed in some very dangerous areas, I would take my team out and then I would go set up in positions that would be easy to attack our own Marine and Army bases. And then I would take photos and I would come back and brief the commanders and show them, hey, these are where the seams and gaps are. And even though as good as what they were at their job and as professional as they were, knew how to do it, guess what? There were still seams and gaps in their security. So we could do that for tactical cunning. And tactical patience is something all the time you have to think about. Well, what tools do I have available to me? right? And how do I utilize them the best manner? How do I not commit too soon, right? How do I not overreact to a situation and miss something that's going on? And that's the essence of tactical patience we would do all the time of, hey, I know there's a chaotic situation going on right now, but it's okay to take a pause, take a look around, figure out what the situation is before I start sending more people into that chaotic situation and potentially make it worse. And geometry of fires is something that we were always picking up an area or a sector of fire or observation, meaning if we're standing here talking, right, I'm not looking at you while I'm talking, Greg. I'm looking out over your back where you can't see, and you're doing the same thing for me. Just basic things, even having a conversation. A guardian angel allowed me to do all kinds of things. When I had someone overwatching me, I could walk into that village elder and have a meeting and have that shura and have that jirga and sit down and be fine and be safe, even though it was a dangerous time, because I had guardian angels in place. So they had one job to look out for my security. So I was free to do whatever other job that I had to have in that area. And then good shepherd, right? That's something you have to live by. How do I show people what right looks like? Not just the junior members of my team that I'm trying to train up and get them to teach them as much as I possibly can, but the people out on the street that saw me, they looked at me and thought a certain thing. So I had to be that good shepherd. Now, great, that's Iraq and Afghanistan and these scary places, but what about going out to dinner with my family? I use all of them. So tactical cunning, well, sometimes when my wife and I, we can't always decide on where we want to go eat when we want to go out for a special occasion. So, hey, I'll use a little tactical cunning on her. I'll kind of drop some hints as the days go forward, right? Hey, what about this new place over here that's right? And then suddenly she arrives to that conclusion on her own, right? Hey, why don't we try that new burger place I heard about? Little does she know I've been talking about that for 3 days. But tactical patience is a perfect example. Every time a new place opens up, we go, I want to go try out the new restaurant. Let's go see what it's all about. But what's going to happen when it opens? Well, it's going to be busy. The lines are going to be long. Hey, maybe they might have some issues with their food service. They're not fully open yet. I like to take that time. Hey, let's wait 2 months. Let's wait a few weeks and then do it. Just as a habit of thought and a habit of action. And geometries of fire are especially important with the little one, right? We got the little kid running around. She's got more energy than my wife and I combined. We can't both be constantly looking at her when we're out in public. So we pass that off. Hey, I'm going to take this area right here, right? I'm going to watch her now. You do what you have to do. And then she'll do the same thing for me. And guardian angel is no different. Same thing I teach my little daughter, right? Hey, when mommy's looking down on her cell phone to text me or to text her friend, you need to be looking up and out and taking a look around the area. I don't scare her. I don't say something bad's going to happen. I just let her know that she needs to have that responsibility. At 8 years old, she understands that and goes, hey, you're watching your cell phone right now. I got it, mommy. Right? So those little things you build in, that stays with you through time. And then the good shepherd, right? Showing what right looks like. Like Greg said, hey, why don't we, when the little one always asks, why don't we park right out in front of the restaurant? Well, we park right down the street just in case there's any type of issue and something happens, like what if it starts on fire and everyone comes rushing out? We won't be able to get to our vehicle and get out of there. But if we're right down the street, we have time to get there and leave the area without, any harm to us. So they're just basic habits of thought and habits of action we put into everything we do. But a lot of this stuff, Greg, there's people listening or on this webinar who have already done something similar. So now we're giving you that framework to overlay each one on top of each other.
So, gentlemen,
I have a question for you. Carmi, I want to throw this to you just before we do that and open it up for questions. I know we've been on blast, but just 2 more quick concepts to think of. During the high holiday, you might be cooking a lot. And so the kitchen is a danger area. So what you want to tell people is, listen, we got to restrict the kids from the kitchen, and we got to put the panhandles over the stove so somebody doesn't inadvertently knock it off and start a fire or burn themselves. Well, that's no different than in my house, where I have 3 floors. I have the basement level, which is the garage, and then I have the floor that I'm broadcasting from, and upstairs is our bedrooms. So Shelly and I invested about $43 per floor to make sure we had a rechargeable radio, a flashlight, and a fire extinguisher in the same location on every floor in case the power goes out, in case there's a natural disaster, not a terrorist attack. And you know what? I would tell your people that are listening right now, the Shul members, if you've never tried to open your garage door without power, you're in for a treat when something bad happens. It's simple, practical tips. And we were on transmit for only 30 minutes, and I would hope that the listeners have at least 1 or 2 takeaways that they can be able to use.
Yeah, that's a great point, Greg. As you're talking about these different components, I'm wondering Is this the same as situational awareness, what we call situational awareness, or are these more specific components? Are you breaking it down into, more digestible bits of situational awareness? Is it the same thing?
Yeah, and Brian, let me lead into this first. And Carmen, you're picking up on something. The problem is that situation awareness means everything, so it means nothing. And you can't be hyper alert all the time. Now, increasing your situation awareness is something you can achieve, but you know what? It's like training your brain. It's like training your body. It's a muscle, and you have to start in incremental fashion, and you have to work up to it. So first, shut off your phone. Next, look at the environment that you're sitting in. Next, walk around your car. But situation awareness is literally the tip of the iceberg. And below waterline is all of those skills that Brian and I were talking about that you have to be good at. Because if you're not, guess what? You'll say, wow, these people are about to rob me. I think he has a gun. I'm aware that I'm about to die. You get no
Right.
practical ability to defend yourself against those attacks. Brian,
Right.
did I hit that pretty good?
No, that's a great point. That's a term that's used frequently. We typically don't use it much, but it's because everyone has a different idea of what it means. But this is what the elements are, like you said, Carmen. This is breaking it down into how we process information, how we think, how we see, right? And then how we articulate our observations. That's what we're talking about, and Greg just said it perfectly. I have to start with something I can write down and understand and use. And that in turn will then get you better. Even just sitting here like this, using these 5 terms we went out, I challenge everyone to go out in your environment and think of those 5 things. And you will start seeing more than you ever thought you saw before in your life, just understanding a few concepts.
Right.
Huh. Very interesting. Thank you. Another question. So for let's say the community member who is walking to Shul on Shabbos, they're walking through the neighborhood. Sometimes, let's say at nighttime, we have to walk home from synagogue, and sometimes some people are walking down a major street, a thoroughfare. Sometimes they have to walk down, smaller side streets. Is there the opportunity for average everyday people just walking to and from synagogue to be able to utilize some of these skills, and what would that look like?
So let me start again, Brian. I apologize for that. And folks, I'm up in the mountains in Colorado, so it looks like I'm popping and locking because I'm a little delayed. I do have that skill, but that's not important right now. So listen, if I was training you to walk in a combat zone and look for an IED or a sniper, I would train you the same way, or your children walking to school, walking to synagogue, wherever they were, to go to have a meal. Listen, certain bombs, when they put them together, smell like nail polish remover. So if I'm in an area and smell a nail polish remover rather than flowers or cut grass, Houston, you may have a problem. Okay? People say, hey, listen, I heard a loud bang, and I thought it was balloons popping. You hear a loud bang? Find a position to cover, take a knee, and be prepared to flee to safety or draw your own weapon and shoot back. I need to understand that the car that's pulling up to me at the curb with the loud music blaring, in the context of the neighborhood I'm in, that might not be a person asking for directions. That might be the beginning of a drive-by shooting. So it's simple things that you see and smell and feel and taste in your environment. Your nose is put above your mouth so you don't eat fetid food, so you don't eat spoiled food. So you're hardwired for your own physical safety by sampling your environment. Your brain, the amygdala in your brain, is constantly sending out signals, sampling it. What you need is a guide. And if you don't have a guide, read a book. And if you don't have a book, go to our free webinars or podcasts. If you don't have any of those, show up at Carmi's house and he'll walk you to school one day. We tell people all the time that a trained person, an operator, is going to see more in one city block than you're going to see all month. And that's hugely important.
Excellent. Do we have any questions that are coming in from the audience? Is there any?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
If someone stops the car in front of you and pulls a gun out and points it at you and you're driving with your kids, what should you do?
Okay, so the question is, if you're sitting in traffic...
Yeah, make sure everybody hears that at home.
Yeah,
That's
I
a
want to
great
repeat.
one.
So the question is, if you're sitting in traffic and the car in front of you stops and the person gets out of the car with a gun and you're in your car with your children, what should you do? They're pointing a gun at you.
So I purport one day to be a legal scholar. I'm not going to talk about the legal. I'm going to talk about the ground truth of the situation. One, it's a property crime. Give up your property. Give it away. It's a car. That's why you pay for insurance. You also have a thing that's right up in front by your steering wheel called a pernel. And when you turn it, it goes from p to to n to d. And if that person jumps out and is coming at you and you feel you're in safety, you're in fear for your own safety or that of your kids, put it in drive and drive over them, or put it in reverse and ram cars out of your way behind you until you're at safety. Now, you're going to say, well, that sounds a bit extreme. Well, I've been in those situations, and you have to act first and you have to act fast. So the idea would be rehearse them. Rehearse them in a parking lot. Rehearse them with other team members. Go to Carmi and say, Carmi, I've never handled a firearm. What do I need to know? Those are the types of questions I would ask. And Brian, what would you add?
It's a great point to bring up what Greg's example earlier about driving and parking and all that, those things, right? So how do I build in that with this situation you talk about where someone gets out and points a gun at you? That's a very obvious one. I always say there's a little skinny pedal on the right. Go ahead and feel free to see how close to the floor you can get that and get out of there. But just like that, giving yourself the gift of time and distance, not pulling right up to someone's bumper when you're at a stoplight. That'll allow you that time. I have room to pull out of here or something that way. I have an out. The idea is I need to always have a way out of the situation when you go in. Yep. And that's what we tell people, the same thing with dinner. Don't think about, all right, I need to count how many people work here and what that person ordered over there and did they order it correctly in the right dialect or something crazy. No, just have a plan to immediately leave if you need to immediately leave at any given time.
And find out if your table's bolted down and how heavy your chair is, because you might be in a shopping center or in a restaurant, and when the shooting starts, you want to follow that chair out the closest window. Those are realistic concerns that you need to be thinking about to improve your security posture.
Great point. Excellent. Brian, are you having any listeners in from the LinkedIn feed that have any questions?
I think we had some here. If I could pull them up, but there's a few things that people typically bring up with us, and they always ask for these little ideas or these little things, or you're talking about human behaviors. And what we have to understand is human behavior pattern recognition. The best way to understand this, recognize your own patterns. See what your patterns of behavior are, and it'll allow you to see everyone else's, right? I always see it's like deception indicators. You got little kids. They're horrible at lying, right? Because they're just learning how to do it. But as they get older, they get better and better. But it's like watching it in slow motion. When you see the little one going, oh, no, there's going to be parents out there watching us. And I'm going, no, I don't think so. So those are small things. Start with your kids, right? Stuff like that. But all of these little things about human behavior patterns, we all do it, no matter what it is. We get up and go to work at the same time every day. We leave the house at the same time. We buy the same things. Those are all those patterns. So if I stick in those, it's like a groove in that record. So the more times I do it over and over, that groove in that record gets deeper and deeper, and it becomes hard to do anything other than what I know. So what we're saying, with habits of thought and habits of action, that's what leads to patterns of behavior. If I implement some basic steps and I do it all the time, that groove in that record is going to get cut, but it's going to be a really good groove in that record because it's going to help me with my safety and security.
Perfect.
And I would say, think of stuff you do every day, Carmi. For example, if you go to the barber, a barber is a trusted agent. It's a person that you've known for a good long time. If it's not, why would you let somebody behind you standing there with a razor or scissors at your most vital, your jugular and your carotid, right? So I would think of a safety bubble around me, around my wife or significant other, around my kids. And when I'm walking through an environment, it's not unlike that McDonald's pool of little balls that they have. Each one interacts with something else. So if I find somebody's paying too much attention to me or my family, I need to know why. If I see a car that's coming, yeah. Yes, of course. If that car is coming too close to my car and it's not stopping at the appropriate distance, I need to know and now I'm ready to go, because it takes time to open a door and come on. It takes time to close that distance, and only the best trained operators in the world are going to be able to do those type of things. So what I do is I counter them by putting my day on my time. I put my security bubble first, above anybody else's. And guess what? If my favorite restaurant for lunch is too busy, I pick a new restaurant. If I have to park further away to be safer, I do that. You have to be in it to win it. You're not going to lose any weight taking a Slim Fast once a week. You got to commit. Look at me. You got to commit yourself to thinking in that manner every single day, and you got to put your family safety first. Your synagogue, you create an interlocking web of security. We called it for the Marine Corps every Marine a collector. We called it for the Army every soldier a sensor. That means all of your folks are the eyes and the ears, the boots on the ground that are going to make you all safer.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, you know, I think it can be particularly difficult for some people because in engaging in protecting your personal bubble, as you characterized it, they could feel like they might offend somebody because, you know, bad guys, you know, sometimes they will use, you know, pretext and they'll use deception and they'll want to come up to you. Hey, do you know how to get to the nearest gas station? I ran out of gas. Hey, excuse me, do you know what time it is? Excuse me, can I borrow your phone? And people don't want to say, no, get away from me. You know, they don't want to step back and say, no, I'm not going to help you because, you know, especially in, you know, the religious community, we've been trained to be courteous to our fellow human being and to want to be helpful to our fellow human being. So it can be instinctually difficult for people to say, you know what, I'll take the next elevator car, thank you, because they don't want to have that perception that they're being offensive to another human being. So does that require retraining sometimes?
Well, sometimes it's just how you ask questions or how you talk to people, right? So the perfect example is, you know, when you have an Uber pulls up and you can get in your Uber and, you know, they've got their name and it's supposed to be your name, you know, you always ask them, hey, what's your name? Not, oh, you're Michael, right? Because that person might not be Michael, but you just told them, right, what the password is, so to speak. Exactly. And so now you just made it easier. So there's small steps like that. And one of the things I always say is conduct what we call SILS. Stop, look, listen, and smell. Sometimes literally stopping, looking left, looking right, taking that big breath in, right, and going, all right, what's new in this area? What it does is it resets your brain. It kind of flips on that light switch and goes, oh, let's take into account what's going on here. And Greg and I also talked about rehearsals and rehearsing this, and it doesn't have to be something very high calorie. So one way to set myself up for success when my family and I go out to dinner is I look at where we're going and I look at the menu before we even get there. I already know what I'm going to order and what I'm going to have. And then I start asking the little one, hey, do you like the mac and cheese there or the chicken tenders? Because I know she's only going to go for one of those too. But the idea is I can elicit that before we ever go in. And now we're thinking. So now when we're in there, one, we don't have to spend time reading through a menu, right? We can enjoy our time together more. We're more present in the moment. And three, that's what makes me more situationally aware. Now I'm going to notice all those things around me because I can attend to my environment because my attention isn't down inside my menu. So when I'm talking about a rehearsal, those little things, making sure we have enough gas, making sure everyone knows where we're going and what they're ordering before we get there, that allows us to have an actual better time as a family, and we're safer in the process.
And Carmi, you said something that was great earlier. I want to put everybody in the mindset of a door greeter. So somebody's coming into the synagogue. You notice that they have a 3/4 length jacket on. It's very warm outside. They're sweating profusely. You don't recognize the person, and they're coming in a hurry. And so now you get into their path, and you ask a couple of simple questions. Hi, are you here for the Jones bar mitzvah? And now that sets the person off a little. They got to think, should I stay or should I go? It's a 1980 Clash hit. And then you ask, so which synagogue do you go to? Oh, and who's the rabbi there? Those few questions, now you're shin bait. You get what I'm trying to say, and you've got the gift of time and distance, and you can start walking with the person out of the way. So now you're walking up, and street guy comes up with a brand new gas can, and he goes, hey, I need a couple of bucks for gas, and he's closing in on you. So rehearse and have a plan. One, what you say is important because if you stutter, they know they got you. So what you're going to do is you're going to say, not today, friend, or not today, pal, or not today with your hand outstretched. Whatever that is, whatever you choose, rehearse it. Rehearse it in the mirror, rehearse it with your significant other, rehearse it with your kids. The other thing is most clothes has what's called a pocket. I always keep a 5 rolled up in the pocket. If somebody's coming up on me, maybe they know me. If they start coming up and they got that rehearse going, you know, hey, the gas thing, I'll take that 5 out, I'll hold it out, see what they're looking at, and I'll drop it and go, hey, sorry, that's for today, and I'll walk away. If they continue to pursue, that's called predatory looks and mission focus. Now I know he's there for some ulterior motive, and I might have to orient towards them and take a more secure posture. Do not be afraid of accidentally offending people, but also you don't have to be a bully and you don't have to be mean. It's okay in a crowded restaurant to say, "Sir, you're scaring me. Somebody call police." That changes the whole dynamic. And you know that little thing that says alarm will sound in 5 seconds? I must have set off 20 of them last year. And I'm sorry, but when I get afraid, I move out smartly. That's why I'm so handsome, even at this age.
Fantastic. That's great, Craig. We had a question come in from one of our feeds that was asking about using the tactical edge, using time as a tactical edge, the tactical patience portion in a scenario where someone was moving, into a clear zone. Can you maybe give an example or elaborate on that?
It's such a great question. Brian, I want to kick you, just talk about a recent incident that happened at a Safeway at King Super up in Colorado. Listen, somebody comes in and they're mission focused and they're shooting, you got to move out smartly. And if that means busting through a door, open a security door, using a cart or the Kling Peaches to get out of there, that's what you do. If it means laying down behind a cart full of Kling Peaches and clinging your kid and low crawling out of there, if you haven't rehearsed it, you're not going to do it in the real thing. The gift of time and distance means you keep your head and you increase the distance from whatever weapon system that person has, and you consistently change their timing. How do you change their timing? They're not going to expect you to jump out the window. They're not going to expect you to put it in reverse and squeal the tires and ram into a parked car to get away. And I'm telling you, those are the types of things that you can rehearse first on paper and then out in your driveway. You don't have to go to an elaborate school and spend a lot of money, but you should get some guidance. One, legal guidance, and two, talk to an expert like Marin. Marin, tell me how you could use time as a weapon.
So time and distance is, just manipulating that operational tempo. It's much more simple sometimes, and communication is a big one. Like, one of the thing is, like, everyone wants to be the gray man or hide out or not be seen. Well, I've been working with Greg a long time, and there's no way he can hide from anything. He sticks out anywhere in the world that we go because he's a big guy. But he blends in using what? Well, exactly the skill set he's talking about. I plays off like he's the buffoon village idiot. So once someone thinks that, guess what? They write you off. They no longer think of that. But I'll give you plenty of examples in cities, especially. Plenty of examples, especially in the city of Chicago. I've had people walk up. I knew they were crossing the street, walking straight up over to me. They were going to ask me for money or something, or had a line. And before they ever got a word out, I stopped, turned, I oriented my entire body in their direction, just said, "You got the wrong guy." And they didn't even break step, immediately took a left turn and went on to someone else, because it was that simple. They knew what they were transmitting, that he understood that I received it, picked it up, and I was not having any of that today. So we went on to a softer target. So I just hardened myself as a target simply by communicating. Yeah. Or the same thing what Greg is talking about, someone coming up and asking for the gas money. When I see that at the gas pump, I turn and go, before they ever say a word, "Hey man, can I get a couple bucks for gas?" And what you do is you get inside their OODA loop. Now they have to react to what you're saying. Now their story doesn't make sense, and they'll just move on to someone else. Now, if they don't move on, now I'm dealing with someone who's very serious, and that's a serious threat. But now I've determined, right, who is the poor homeless person who's trying to beg for money, and who's the person that intends on doing me harm, just by using some communication.
Exactly.
So let me give you an example, if I understand this correctly. Let's take the synagogue greeter scenario, and we see the man approaching in 90-degree weather with the long trench coat and the hoodie, and he's sweating profusely. I see him walking towards me, and I'm the greeter. What if I just simply walked into the synagogue and locked the door? Is that using
there's
time?
Nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So listen, if you're going to give first aid, it's ABCs, right? So that's airway, breathing, and circulation, right, to make sure you stop the bleeding. Well, I would say you write down on your yellow pad at home, ABCD. Always be considering de-escalation. We live by that. Listen, if you're an adversary, you might have to fight somebody. If I'm carrying a gun, I might have to shoot somebody. I don't carry a gun. I'm so well trained that if I need one, I'll take yours. But the idea is to increase the distance and close that door and close those blast shields and call for help is fine. But I'll tell you the other thing. Your greeter might have to take this one and walk out and start leading the person away. Maybe it's just a person that's got a mental illness and they're not sure what's going on. Maybe they're inebriated. But if that person fails to follow commands or directions, starts reaching in their pockets and trying to come in to hurt somebody, it's time to Krav Maga their butt and get them out of there. You have to have a line in the sand that you say, my folks will not cross, and write it as a policy and rehearse it. And then guess what? What do you do every week, Carmi? You go out and you deal with local law and say, this is what we want to do. Is it legal? Can I do this? Where should the sign be? If you don't coordinate with them, and I'll tell you another thing. Listen, folks, if you're at home, where's the closest level 1 trauma center to your house? If you don't know the answer to that question, you better start looking in the phone book tonight. Those are simple, practical things that you can do. And guess what? You haven't paid us $1. And our goal, Carmi, is if the rest of the show and your membership is learning at least one thing, why don't we do these every couple of weeks so we can increase everybody's awareness to the level where they're an opponent, not a victim, where they can think their way out of these situations.
Yeah, well, I think there's absolutely a direct correlation to what you're talking about, to the synagogue greeter role, the greeter and the screener. And synagogues do this, and there's different configurations. Some work with armed security, some work with off-duty police officers, some work with 2 members of the synagogue, one that is doing the greeting and one that's doing the screening. And there's all kinds of scenarios that can play out in this way. But being able to be forward-thinking enough so we're not always being reactive and being the first responder and simply reacting to intelligence that we know is coming our way and reacting to threats that are already at our doorstep. I think it's an amazingly important skill set for our community to learn, and I'd love to involve you guys more in teaching us how to do that, and perhaps even putting together a full-blown greeter and screener operations class where people can learn how to go through the soft interrogation, learn the soft interrogation skills, learn the observation skills, and learn exactly what it is that they need to be looking for and how to respond to it effectively so that they don't become the first responder, so that they're not just being reactive. And like I said, our Shul Safety Officer program that we've been humbled by so much support that we've been receiving in the community, is by all accounts focused on the reactive aspect of this. So I think we really need to enhance these skills, and I think there is a lack of knowledge and there's a lack of qualified instructors, and we're really glad to have come across the 2 of you gentlemen who have this world-class skill set that you're making available to the community for free. So kudos to you. As it says in the Bible, those who bless Israel will be blessed. So may both of you gentlemen be blessed in all of your endeavors and have success. And we look forward to collaborating with you in the future. Thank you. Is there anything else that you think is important or that you'd like to say to the community before we sign off tonight?
Carmi, I'm honored to be here. This doesn't have to be a huge expenditure of finances or calories or time. Help us help you, and everybody can become safer literally overnight, and it's incremental. Brian?
Yeah, same. I just appreciate you giving us the time to come on here and talk to your folks and share this. We'd love to be able, if we could just give all of this away all the time to everyone, we would love to be able to do that. So we love doing events like this, and then we'd like to do something for your folks that are really involved in the operational security, not just all over Chicago area. You've got plenty of connections there, so we can come in and get you spun up really well, and then they can spread that out through the community. I think that would be really great.
Well, I can't thank you enough. And I want to thank you on behalf of the Concerned Citizens League Shul Members of Skokie, on behalf of the Chicago Jewish community, and on behalf of the Jewish community worldwide in helping to protect our community and keep us safer. I also want to give a big shout out to Rena Friedman Watts for helping with this podcast. We've never done a podcast before. Everything we've done is with the Hollywood Squares Zoom and Teams and everything. So this is a new format for us. And Rena was instrumental in helping this happen. She's got her own podcast called BetterCallDaddy.com. And Yoni from Simcha Events in Rogers Park. Thank you very much. He is the genius behind all of this technology here. We really appreciate everybody who spent time. Chaim Nadich, the president of our organization, Avraham Hershkovitz, our treasurer, and Vice President. Thank you very much for putting this together. And what we're going to do, gentlemen, if you don't mind, is we're going to take the recording of this and we're going to make it available to people who couldn't be here tonight. And we're going to post it on social media, and we're going to distribute it as widely as we can. And we would encourage you to do the same, so that you know, if there's members of the Jewish community in Dubai and in South America that are, you know, asleep right now, that they can watch this in the morning. Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
We plan on putting it on our website too. We'd love to do that.
Great. Well, Brian,
and if you still got a question, reach out to us.
We absolutely will, and we look forward to our increasing collaboration over the next couple of months. Brian Marin and Greg Williams of Arcadia Cognerati, thank you so much. We are humbled by your support. We are humbled by your willingness to share and your lifelong background, skills, and experience with us. And good night, folks. Stay well, stay safe, and Shalom Aleichem.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.